Could we see the Losers Club try to take down Pennywise as senior citizens? It's pretty unlikely, and for good reason. This is why It Chapter 3 is almost certainly never going to get made. The first thing to acknowledge about Stephen King's 1986 novel It is that it's more than 1,100 pages long. The novel, about a group of 7 friends who find themselves stalked by a demonic, shape-shifting clown that lives in the sewers under their small Maine hometown, spans 2 time periods. Half of the book takes place in the 1950s, where the protagonists are hovering around age 12, and the other half takes place 27 years later, when they've grown into unhappy adults still haunted by memories of their childhood nemesis. The book alternates back and forth between these 2 time frames, showing how confronting your deepest fears as a child can lead to trauma and dysfunction as an adult. The mythology of It is complex and baffling. It's not covered in the movies and the TV miniseries adaptations, but the novel explains that the evil shape-shifting clown Pennywise is actually an eldritch spider demon from another dimension that surrounds known space. Pennywise came to Earth centuries ago and has been regularly stalking the humans of Derry ever since.
I am eternal, child. I am the eater of worlds and of children.
Every 27 years, Pennywise awakens from its hibernation cycle to feed on human meat. It learned long ago that human beings are tastier when in a state of fear, so its hunting method is to read people's thoughts and take the form of whatever they fear the most. In order to gaze at the monster's true form, one must engage in a ceremony called the Ritual of Chud. One other thing, it's not mentioned much in the movies or TV shows, but Pennywise also has an arch-nemesis in the form of a giant galactic turtle named Maturin, the same one from many of Earth's ancient creation myths. Pennywise the clown monster hates the ancient giant space turtle god. It's all perfectly clear and logical. In 1990, Tommy Lee Wallace wrote and directed a miniseries adaptation of It, breaking it into 2 movie-length chapters, one set in the 50s with a child cast, and one set decades later. The clown was played by Tim Curry, who left a nightmarish residue in the minds of all the children who saw him. In an attempt to match the length and density of the novel, the miniseries ended up with a runtime of about 192 minutes. Not talked about as much, at least in North America, is the 1997 TV series Woe, a 52-episode epic produced in India by ZTV. This series features the Indian superstar Lilliput as the evil clown and transposes the central action from New England to the Indian city of Pangani. Woe seems to be the longest film rendition of It ever produced, running about 18.5 hours. It also changed and arguably improved the ending of King's original novel, which is popularly considered to be pretty weak. In Woe, it's revealed that Pennywise is not an ineffable space deity, but the ghost of a human being killed years before. Prior to becoming a murderous ghost, Pennywise was a victim of bullying himself. Rather than confront the monster in the sewers, Pennywise's victims in Woe absolve him, and he moves on to the other side. Fast forward to 2017, and director Andy Muschietti, working from a screenplay by Chase Palmer, Gary Fukunaga, and Gary Dauberman, adapted Stephen King's novel once again, this time as a pair of feature films. Split in 2 like the 1990 miniseries, the first It takes place in the past, with the protagonists as children. But now the action has been time-shifted forward to the late 1980s. It Chapter 2, written by Dauberman alone, came out 2 years later and took place in the present day with a new cast of adults, along with some flashbacks to their childhood selves. In total, the 2 It films add up to 304 minutes in length. The story concludes at the end of It Chapter 2, with the clown demon once again bested by the bravery and resourcefulness of the main characters. But there's still a lot left unexplored. The turtle god wasn't addressed, for one. But more obviously, the kids from the 2017 film did a lot of their own research into the past of Pennywise, finding scary old photos and film reels where he can be spotted. This implies a broad and detailed backstory for Pennywise, likely rife with terrifying episodes of people being tormented and eaten over the course of Derry's dark history. The It feature films had many fans, and some wondered if the unaddressed history of Pennywise would grace the big screen. In 2019, Muschietti put the kibosh on such rumors, but since then, some things have changed. Speaking to Gizmodo at the time of the second film's release, Muschietti did indicate that there is potentially more story to be told in his universe, saying, "Mythology is something that always has opportunities to explore. It has been on Earth for millions of years. He's been in contact with humans for hundreds of years, every 27 years. So you can imagine the amount of material. It's always exciting to think of eventually exploring this mythology. It's very exciting." While nothing was in the works in 2019, there have since been new developments. It was reported by Variety in April of 2022 that a prequel series called Welcome to Derry was in the early stages of development. The new series was to take place in the same timeline as Muschietti's films, but with action dating back to the 1960s.
Back and play! Back and play with the clown!
Production on Welcome to Derry began in May 2023. Muschietti is producing the series with his sister and producing partner, Barbara, with Jason Fuchs writing. Muschietti is also directing the first episode. A tweet from the Max streaming service claimed that Welcome to Derry will be released in 2024. A prequel is a wise choice, as a direct sequel would make Pennywise's death less significant. It would also devalue the sacrifices made by several characters at the end of It Chapter 2. In the original book's mythology, Pennywise had been stalking Derry, Maine for decades, so looking into the past for story ideas makes perfect sense. The idea of an It prequel had been germinating for a while. In the 2019 interview, Pennywise actor Bill Skarsgård discussed how It could be revisited while acknowledging that the two movies already covered all of the novel's most notable events. He elaborated, "There is this interesting aspect of going back in time before all this happened. There might be a story there that might be worth exploring. Obviously, that would be a story that's not in the book. It would be a freestanding story, but obviously within the same universe. So there might be something interesting out of it. I think it would be fun." So far, we know that the prequel series will star Jovan Adepo, Chris Chalk, Taylor Page, Madeline Stowe, James Remar, and Stephen Ryder. There is no word as to whether or not Stephen King will be involved in production at all. Given the number of films and TV shows based on the author's works, it's likely he'll step back and let Muschietti and Fuchs play in his sandbox. Not many other details about Welcome to Derry have been revealed, although Muschietti teased audiences by posting a photo from the set on his Instagram account. All that fans might glean from his sneak peek is that the chief of police is named Clint Bowers, an apparent relative of Henry Bowers, the bully that torments the Losers Club. Jared Blanchard and Michael Cole played Henry in the 1990 miniseries, while Nicholas Hamilton and Teach Grant played him in Muschietti's movies. Henry falls under the spell of Pennywise and is prompted to go on a murderous rampage at the evil clown's bidding. According to King's novel, Henry's deceased, abusive, and alcoholic father was named Oscar Butch Bowers. A family member named Clint is not mentioned in King's novel or any of the other renditions of the story to date, meaning he's an original character for the show. Given the time frame, one might assume that Clint is Butch's father. A big theme of It is the passing of trauma from one generation to the next, so it's certainly possible that Clint will also be part of the cycle of abuse.
Look at them now, boys. Ain't nothing like a little fear to make a paper man crumble.
It's also unclear if Welcome to Derry will tap into the vast pool of interconnected Stephen King mythology that already exists within the author's many novels. King is notorious for spreading supporting players across multiple novels, even just in passing. For instance, the character of Ben Hanscom from It is mentioned by name in King's 1994 novel Insomnia, as well as his 2011 novel 11/22/63. Also appearing in 11/22/63 were the It characters of Beverly Marsh and Richie Tozier, albeit in very small roles. Eddie Kasbrak and Stanley Uris are mentioned in the same story, as is Mike Hanlon. Hanlon is also talked about in King's 2001 novel Dreamcatcher, and he makes an appearance in Insomnia. It's worth noting that Welcome to Derry is set in the forward time shifting of Muschietti's movies that are set in the late 1980s and the late 2010s. Setting a prequel in the early 1960s lines up perfectly with Pennywise's hibernation cycle. Speaking of Pennywise, the clown spider is far from the only powerful malevolent force around. If one delves deep into Stephen King's lore, they'll find an entire pantheon of evil gods that infiltrate many of his stories, Pennywise included. Pennywise is a deity called a glamour, a type of creature that appears in 4 Past Midnight, The Outsider, the short story If It Bleeds, and the 2021 noir novel Later. There's also the Deadlights, the source of Pennywise's magic. The Deadlights also play an important function in King's notoriously complicated Dark Tower series. This 7-novel cycle uses interdimensional shenanigans to essentially link all of Stephen King's stories together. The Deadlights were accessed by a character known as the Crimson King, who serves as the supreme evil Satan-like figure of the Stephen King universe. And to think it all started with a simple fable of a clown, a symbol for childhood abuse, that lives in a sewer and eats children. Whether or not Muschietti intends to link Welcome to Derry to the vast fantasy universe of the Crimson King remains to be seen. But regardless, it's pretty clear that the narrative arcs of Bill, Beverly, and the rest of the Losers Club have come to an end for good.